If your child walks in on you having sex, it can feel huge in the moment. A lot of parents go straight into panic mode and think, have I traumatized them? Do I need to explain everything right now? Do I pretend nothing happened? What do I do? And this is one of those situations parents ask me about a lot and in a complete head spin. So let me calm this down straight away. This is usually not the disaster that parents think it is. It's awkward, yeah, but it's usually a repair moment, not a disaster. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through what not to do, what to say in the moment and what to say later, and how to handle it without panic, over-explaining or making it much weirder than it needs to be. And stay with me, because what you do in the first few seconds is not the same as what you do later. Mixing those up is where a lot of parents get stuck, and the follow-up is actually the part that matters most. Parents panic really hard when this happens because it hits adult shame really fast. They suddenly feel exposed, embarrassed, and judged, and then their brain starts racing ahead. What does my child think? Have I messed this up? Have I scared them? Do I need to fix it immediately? And after years of having those conversations with parents, I can tell you this, the part that usually makes this tougher is not the walk-in itself, it's that panic afterwards. And kids don't always experience these moments in the dramatic way adults imagine they do. Sometimes they're confused, sometimes they're curious, sometimes they're startled, and sometimes they just want to leave immediately. A lot of parents aren't only reacting to what their kids saw, they're reacting to their own shame about it. And even when you know better, your nervous system can still get there first. And that's just being human. And in a second, I'll tell you the mistake parents make here that often creates more confusion than less. So what not to do? Let's start there. Don't launch into a giant explanation while everyone is flustered. Don't suddenly turn it into a full lesson on sex, love, reproduction, privacy, bodies, relationships, just because your child saw something for a few seconds. That almost always creates more overwhelm, not more understanding. And please don't shame your child for walking in, and don't act like they've done something wrong. And please do not come up with some terrible cover story because you panicked. I feel really strongly about this because a bad cover story usually makes things way more confusing for kids than the original moment. And that is how parents end up saying something ridiculous that nobody believes. And now the child is not only confused about what they saw, but they're also confused about why you're acting so strangely. Kids are very good at noticing when adults are being weird. And if you lie badly, overreact, or shut down completely, that message they often take in is that what they saw must be so bad, no one can talk normally about it. The other thing not to do is avoid it forever. Pretending it never happened doesn't make a child feel safer. It usually just leaves them alone with whatever meaning they've made from it. And the immediate response here is actually much simpler than parents think. In that first moment, your job is not to explain everything. Your job is just to settle the moment down, keep it short, calm, and boring. You don't need perfect words. You just need words that lower the temperature. And you can say something like, you weren't meant to see that. That was a private adult moment. You're okay. We can talk about it later if you want to. And that's enough. You're not pretending nothing happened, and you're not dumping a whole lot of adult information on a child who is already probably overloaded. And what I see all the time is parents thinking that if they don't explain everything right then, they're still avoiding it. But that's not what's happening. You're just not choosing that most overwhelmed moment to do the talking, and that's a difference, and it matters. And this is the next important bit. You do not need to explain adult sex in detail just because your child accidentally saw something. That does not need to become one giant talk. What matters most in that moment is that you're calm, they're not in trouble, and the door, well, figuratively speaking, stays open. And in a second, I'll give you the follow-up piece because that's where the real repair usually happens. So what do you say later on? Later on, once everyone's calmed down, that or the next morning, that's when you can do the follow-up. The first moment is just about getting through the moment. The later conversation is what tells your child, this was awkward, but you can still ask me things. That is the whole askable parent piece. What you say later depends a bit on age, but the tone stays the same. If they're younger, you can keep it very simple and say, that was a private adult moment. You didn't do anything wrong by walking in. If you want to ask me something, you can. If they're a bit older, you can say, you can be a little bit more direct and say, that was a private moment between adults. Sometimes adults in a relationship are physically close or naked together in private. If you want to ask questions, you can. And if they're older again, you can name it more clearly without turning it into a huge speech. You might say, you probably realise you walked in on a sexual moment, and they can feel awkward, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. And this is a part that I really want parents to remember. Answer the question your child actually has, not the 10 questions that you're scared they might have. And that one shift helps a lot. Parents often think they need one perfect, complete explanation, but you don't. All you need is a calm, factual, age-appropriate conversation. And there is one follow-up mistake I want to mention before I finish, because it can quietly shut things down. The mistake is acting like the goal is to erase the awkwardness. It's not. The goal is repair. And this is one of those moments where being askable matters much more than being impressive. Your child doesn't need you to be polished. They need you to be steady enough that they can still come back later. And that is something I come back to again and again in my work with parents. It's not the awkward moment that decides everything. It's what happens next. And if your child learns that they can ask questions, that they're not in trouble, and that you can talk about awkward things without freaking out, that is a really good outcome. Much better than a perfect speech and much more useful long term. Because what your child needs from this moment is not a performance. They need a parent who stays open enough to repair. So if this ever happens in your house, here is what I want you to remember. Do not panic. Do not lie badly. Do not shame your child. And do not think that you need one perfect response that fits everything on the spot. Respond calmly in the moment. Come back later. Keep it factual and age appropriate, and make sure your child knows they can still ask questions. One awkward moment does not shut down communication. Adults shutting communication down does that. And honestly, parents, you don't need to be perfect here. You just need to be calm enough to repair, and that's the win. Now, if your brain goes blank in awkward moments, that's okay. It just means you need some simple, repeatable ways to respond. And that is exactly what I teach over at Sex Ed Rescue.